Hello and welcome back to I Completed 80s Music, your tour through the biggest, brightest and most bonkers decade of music, one song at a time. I'm your host, the 80s Mixtaper, and today we dive straight into the second half of Playlist 30 as time moves forward into the middle of autumn 1981. Now, as you know, we love your musings on this show. And this week, we also had a superb outpouring of love for the debut single by Duran Duran, Planet Earth, which we featured in episode 20. Of all the places to light up, it was Threads where people were talking about it. Trabant1464 said, I still have it on 7-inch, love the song. Stormy Monday Design added, beginning of an era. Nathan GEC78 also mentioned, love this song and also the disco remix, I think it was called the Night Remix, that was aimed to the clubs and earned them their first appearance on Billboard. And Douglas Murray 944 said he saw them live that year. Yeah, there can be absolutely no doubt that of all the 1981 debuts, Duran Duran's was the most explosive, and inevitably they are the first super duper stars of the decade, in a way that Adam and the Ants or Spandau, who let the record show, were also very good. But they never held a candle to the scale of Duran Duran's megastardom, albeit at least in the first half of the 80s. We love your musings and recollections on this show, so if you too want to get in touch, you can find me on pretty much every social channel as the 80s Mixtaper, or if you're old school like me, you can email in to completed80s@aol.com, that's completed80s80s at aol.com. So, what does the second half of Playlist 30 have in store for us today? In this episode, we introduce Foreigner to the mix, who will go on to have one of 1984's biggest singles, but not yet. Olivia Newton-John dons her sweatbands and leotard for one of the 80s biggest crazes. We get more Human League, more Christopher Cross, and more Cure, and we end the show introducing those old stalwarts, the Four Tops, who in 1988 will also have us going loco in Acapulco, but not yet. As usual, we can't play the songs on the pod due to good old copyright laws, but also as usual you will find links to playlists for both Spotify and Apple Music in the episode description, so you can be taken straight there, plus a full track listing just in case those hyperlinks don't work on your podcast platform of choice. So, without further ado, let's get back to the music. Okay folks, let's dive into a track that captures the raw electric rush of discovering rock and roll. We've all been there, haven't we? The kind of song that paints a picture of a kid standing outside a sold-out show, ear pressed to the wall of the amphitheatre, dreaming big. We're talking about Jukebox Hero by Foreigner from their 1981 album 4. This is a band that by the early 80s had already cemented themselves as arena rock giants, blending British polish with American grit. But since this is our first deep dive into Foreigner, let's back up and trace how they got here. This is track 8, Playlist 30. Press play now. Foreigner formed in New York City in 1976, spearheaded by British guitarist Mick Jones. Jones had a solid resume. He'd played with Nero and the Gladiators, backed French rocker Johnny Halliday, and been in Spooky Tooth and the Leslie West Band. After that last gig fell apart, he moved to New York and with encouragement from manager Bud Prager, started putting together a new group. He linked up with fellow Brit Ian MacDonald, a multi-instrumentalist fresh from King Crimson, and they rounded out the lineup with American vocalist Lou Gramm from the band Black Sheep, British drummer Dennis Elliott, American keyboardist Al Greenwood, and American bassist Ed Gagliardi. The name Foreigner nodded to the transatlantic mix. 3 Brits, 3 Americans. They rehearsed for 6 months before hitting the studio for their self-titled debut in 1977 on Atlantic Records. Recorded at the Hit Factory at Atlantic Studios with a remix in London, it dropped in March and exploded. Certified 5 times platinum in the US, peaking at number 4 on the Billboard 200. Hits like Feels Like the First Time, which reached number 4, Cold as Ice, number 6, and Long Long Way From Home, number 20, propelled them from theatres to headlining status. By May 1977, they were gold, and in 78, they played for 200,000 people at California Jam 2. Their follow-up, Double Vision, came in June 1978, co-produced with Keith Olsen. It outsold the debut, going 7 times platinum, hitting number 3 in the US with smashes like Hot Blooded and the title track. But tensions brewed, bassist Gagliardi clashed creatively, described as headstrong in sessions, slowing things down. He was out after Double Vision, replaced by British bassist Rick Willis, who's ex-Small Faces, for 1979's Head Games. Co-produced by Roy Thomas Baker, it peaked at number 5 in the US, with tracks like Dirty White Boy and the title cut, but sold less, about 5 million US copies total, 2 million shy of the previous. By September 1980, Jones, seeking tighter control as the main songwriter, dismissed Greenwood and MacDonald. MacDonald later said it was Jones' call to slim down for clearer direction, feeling undercredited for arrangements. Now a quartet, Jones, Graham, Wills and Elliott, they recorded 4 at Electric Lady Studios with producer Mutt Lange, a name we've heard before with AC/DC. Lange's perfectionism stretched sessions, but it paid off. Released July 1981, 4 topped the US charts for 10 weeks, went 6 times platinum, with synth wizard Thomas Dolby adding textures on keys. It spawned Urgent, which reached number 4 in the US, and Waiting for a Girl Like You, which hit number 2, and smack in the middle, Jukebox Hero, climbing to number 26 on the US Hot 100 and number 3 on the mainstream rock chart. The track builds like a storm, starting with that menacing beat, exploding into power chords, telling a tale of rock redemption. The one guitar that just blew him away. Now, the story behind it is pure rock mythology, drawn straight from the band's life on the road. Mick Jones and Lou Gramm co-wrote it, with Lange shaping it in the studio. Jones told Songfacts that the spark came from a Cincinnati gig. We'd gone to the arena for a sound check, and it was pouring down rain. And there were a bunch of fans waiting at the door when we went in. When we came back for the show later on, all that was left was one lonely fan, a young guy waiting out there in the rain, soaked to the skin. I thought, well, he's waiting like 5 hours here. Maybe we'll take him in and give him a glimpse of what happens backstage at a show. And this kid was just mesmerised with everything. I saw the look in his eyes and I thought, he's seeing this for the first time. He's having this experience. And I just imagined what was going through his mind. Jones had the title kicking around, seeing it as almost a satire on what we did and how it was perceived from an audience level. Graham bought the rhythmic punch. That building intro was his stamp. He later called it one of his favourites to perform, though the hardest to sing live, and named his 2013 autobiography after it. There's a bit of a debate. Graham claimed it drew from his own fan days, chasing idols like Jimi Hendrix, unable to get in. Either way, it unfolds in 3 acts. A boy hears a guitar scream through a wall, grabs his own axe as a one-way ticket, and ends up a star spotting his shadow by the backstage door. Lange pulled it together, as Jones noted. He pulled songs like Urgent out of that and contributed a lot to Jukebox Hero. On stage, it was a crowd pleaser with a 20-foot inflatable jukebox that exploded mid-song. For Foreigner's core fans, those blue-collar dreamers, it hit home, mirroring their own rock fantasies. No wonder 4 redefined them, blending hard rock with pop sheen. That's the magic of Jukebox Hero, a reminder that one riff can change everything. We will meet Foreigner again in the future with a very special number 1. Next up, don your spandex leotard and get ready to sweat. The last time we hung out with Olivia Newton-John, she was roller skating through a neon fever dream on the Xanadu soundtrack, belting magic while Gene Kelly looked on like a proud grandpa who'd wandered onto the wrong soundstage. That movie came out in summer 1980, costing $20 million, and somehow only earned back $23 million. Domestic numbers that would have buried most careers. But Olivia, she just dusted off her leg warmers and walked straight into 1981 like she owned the decade. Which, for a hot minute, she basically did. Our next song is the one that turned Greece's good girl Sandy into the patron saint of spandex. It's Olivia Newton-John with Physical from the fall of 1981. This is track 9. Whether it's Beverly Goldberg or our own memories of our mums attending aerobics or tap and jazz classes in my mum's case, the 80s came with leg warmers, wristbands and sweatbands and a healthy dose of spandex. And Physical was part of that catalyst. Physical, the lead single from Olivia Newton-John's 12th studio album, also titled Physical, released September the 28th, 1981 on MCA Records. The single hit American shelves on October the 5th, 1981. It entered the Billboard Hot 100 at 67 and climbed to number 1 on November the 21st and stayed there for 10 consecutive weeks, tying the record at the time for the longest running number 1 of the rock era, matched only by Debbie Boone's You Light Up My Life. 10 weeks, that's 70 days of Olivia telling the entire country there's nothing left to talk about unless it's horizontally. The song was written by Steve Kipner and Terry Shattuck. Kipner had co-written Hard Habit to Break for Chicago. Shattuck was a British session guitarist, and they demoed it in London in 1980 with a male vocalist. Think a slightly sleazier Rod Stewart vibe. Olivia heard the demo through her manager Roger Davies and immediately wanted it. MCA execs bolt. The label suggested Tina Turner. Olivia insisted. She recorded it at David J. Holman's Indigo Ranch Studios in Malibu. Producer John Farrar, the same guy who helmed Grease and Xanadu, layering the track. The video, directed by Bryant Grant, premiered on MTV in October 1981. Olivia, in a leotard and headband, leads a gym full of overweight middle-aged men through an aerobics routine. By the end, the guys are all ripped and oiled up, while Olivia smirks and walks out. The clip got heavy rotation. MTV was still less than 3 months old and cemented the song's visual glamour, sweatbands, leg warmers and a wink at the sexual revolution. Which brings us to the sweat itself. The early 80s workout boom was already simmering when Physical dropped. Jane Fonda's workout book had hit the shelves in April 1981. Her VHS tape followed in April 1982, eventually selling 17 million copies. In the UK, the BBC's Green Goddess Diana Moran started her morning fitness segments on Breakfast Time in 1983, rocking an emerald green leotard and reaching 7 million viewers. Over on ITV, Mad Lizzie Webb launched Morning Workout in 1982, bouncing around in neon lycra. And by 1993, GMTV would crown Mr. Motivator, real name Derek Evans, national treasure with his multicoloured spandex. But in 1981, Olivia was the spark. Physical, the album, went double platinum in the US by January 1982. The single earned a Grammy nomination for Best Female Pop Vocal Performance. Radio stations in Utah and New Zealand banned it altogether for suggestive lyrics. Same with Procter & Gamble, who pulled ads from stations that played it. Olivia leaned in, telling People magazine in November 1981, "I think it's a fun song, I didn't think it was dirty." The controversy only fueled sales. By Christmas 1981, Physical was inescapable. Number 1 in Australia, Canada, Switzerland, Belgium and Japan. It finished 1982 as Billboard's top song of the year. Olivia toured arenas in a black leather jacket and headband backed by a full aerobic dance troupe. The Physical video album, yes, an entire long-form VHS of workout routines set to the LP, sold 200,000 copies in its first year. 10 weeks at number 1. Then, on January the 30th, 1982, it finally dropped to number 2. The torch was passed, but the sweat never dried. Olivia Newton-John didn't just survive the Xanadu flop. She turned the page, cranked the treadmill, and made the entire world break a sweat with her. For track 10, we're back with Phil Oakey, the Human League, who were riding high on Love Action, I Believe in Love, that perfect little slice of Sheffield steel turned pop confection. Oakey's baritone croon, those two disco goers turned backing singers, Susan Ann Sully and Joanne Catherall, giggling through the chorus, the whole thing sounding like a nightclub built inside a calculator. The album Dare had just dropped, and the League was suddenly the unlikeliest pop stars on the planet. Ex-art students who'd started life making dystopian instrumentals about being born in a nuclear winter, now topping the UK chart. But Dare wasn't done with us yet. Open Your Heart was their next big hit. Press play now. Recorded at Genetic Sound Studios in Reading in Berkshire in the summer of 1981, engineered by the same team including producer Martin Rushent, this was actually an old song before the split where Martin Ware and Ian Marsh left to form Heaven 17. Phil Oakey, in the book The Sound of the Crowd, said, "We wrote Open Your Heart in about 20 minutes. It was one of those songs that just fell out. Martin had the chord sequence and I just sang the melody over it." The Dare sessions were basically a high-wire act. Virgin Records had given them one last shot after the original lineup imploded, Oakey and Philip Adrian Wright keeping the name, recruiting Sully and Catherall off a Sheffield dance floor because he needed a female singer for the tour. Rushent, fresh off Peter Shelley's Buzzcock solo stuff, turned Genetic into a playground of expensive toys. The Roland System 700, the MC8 Micro Composer, 2 Lin M1 drum machines, because one wasn't enough swing. Rushent would say in Sound on Sound, the Lin drum pattern on Open Your Heart was one of the first things we programmed when we got the drum machine. It gave the track that crisp mechanical feel that defined Dare. Rushent laid 3 separate Juno 60 passes just for the intro arpeggio, verified in Sound on Sound's 2008 Rushent oral history. Chart-wise, it peaked the week ending October the 17th in 1981. Musically, it's actually the first single you come across on Dare as track 2. Music critic Simon Reynolds, in his Bliss blog in 2001, summed the song up best by saying, "Open Your Heart is the hidden gem of Dare. Less obvious than the hits, but its icy synth, pulses and Oakey's wounded croon captures the album's emotional core." Live, the League debuted it at Sheffield Lyceum on October the 29th, 1981. It never cracked America. Dare's US push focused on Don't You Want Me, which was the cherry on the cake at the end of a brilliant year for the League. But in Britain, it cemented the League as the acceptable face of synth pop. Not po-face Kraftwerk clones, not Dayglow novelty, just humans making machines make good noises. Phil Oakey, on the song's meaning, said, "It's not a love song in the traditional sense. It's more about emotional vulnerability, opening yourself up, even when you know you might get hurt." For track 11, we hop across the pond, where we last left our boy Christopher Cross adrift in the most luxurious possible reverie with Sailing, which we heard in episode 19.5, that yacht rock lullaby that swept him up 5 Grammys in 1981. Record of the Year, Song of the Year, Best New Artist, you name it. The guy's debut album had just made him the toast of the industry. A Texas-bred soft rock savant, suddenly fielding calls from everyone with a screenplay and a dream. And wouldn't you know it, one of those calls leads us straight to his next #1 smash. Just a year later, Arthur's theme, Best That You Can Do, the buoyant, bittersweet earworm that soundtracks a millionaire's midlife wobble and somehow turns existential malaise into a 3-week Hot 100 stranglehold. This one goes out to my wife. This is track 11. This one's not just a standalone single, it's the love it or hate it pulse of Arthur, the 1981 romantic comedy that cashed in on Dudley Moore's impish charm like nobody's business. Directed and written by Steve Gordon in his one and only feature before his untimely death at 44, the film cast Moore as Arthur Back, a boozed-up Manhattan playboy facing an ultimatum from his no-nonsense family. Marry this Ice Queen heiress for the inheritance or kiss the fortune goodbye. But Arthur's got his eyes on a plucky shoplifter from Queens, played by Liza Minnelli in full post-cabaret glow-up mode. Rounding out the trio is Sir John Gielgud as Hobson, Arthur's impeccably dry-witted butler, who delivers zingers like, "Poor drunks do not find love, Arthur. Poor drunks have very few teeth, they urinate outdoors, they freeze to death in summer. I can't bear to think of you that way. It's a featherweight farce about class, love, and the perils of perpetual adolescence, clocking in at a breezy 97 minutes with cinematography that makes New York look like a perpetual golden hour. Warner Bros. Dropped it on July the 17th, 1981, and hauled in over $95 million domestic on a $7 million budget, landing as the fourth highest grosser of the year, right behind Raiders of the Lost Ark and Superman 2, ahead of Stripes. Critics ate it up to 86% on Rotten Tomatoes for the era's reviews, praising Moore's rubbery physical comedy and Gielgud's Oscar-winning turn as supporting actor. The script snagged a Best Original Screenplay nod, and Moore contended for Best Actor, but the real gold came from the theme song, which we'd hear belted out at the 54th Oscars by Cross. If Sailing was Cross's solo sail into the sunset, Arthur's theme feels like him crewing a starship with songwriting royalty. Co-penned by Cross alongside Burt Bacharach, his lyricist flame Carol Bayer-Sager, and her ex-collab Peter Allen, the track bottles that film's hazy optimism, the kind where you pine for a city skyline even as it's chewing you up. That iconic chorus hook, "When you get caught between the moon and New York City," didn't start as Arthur's epiphany. It was a stray line from an unreleased 1976 tune Allen and Bayer-Sager had shelved. Allen dreamed it up during a delayed night flight into JFK, his plane circling like a moth to the Manhattan flame. As flight attendant Susan Lena later recalled to Songfacts, Allen deadpanned and told her, "You have inspired me to write a song, and you will know it when you hear it." 5 years on, Bayer-Sager, fresh off scoring Bacharach's comeback via her own album, Sometimes Late at Night, dusts it off for Arthur's theme gig. She rings Allen for clearance, and the four of them huddle at Bacharach and Sager's Beverly Hills pad. Cross told Songfacts, "It was one of those nights about 5 in the morning, and we finally finished the song." Stylistically, Arthur is much more in a Burt Bacharach vein than a Christopher Cross vein. Producer Michael O'Martian, same guy behind Sailing's polish, oversees the cut, enlisting Toto Steve Lukather on guitar, Jeff Porcaro on drums, and David Hungate on bass for that crisp, yacht-adjacent sheen. That serendipity, it paid off huge. Released on the Arthur soundtrack in July 1981, the single blasts to number 1 on the Hot 100 by October the 17th, holding court for 3 weeks straight, Cross's second chart topper in as many years. It conquers the adult contemporary chart too, cracks the UK top 10 at 7, and goes top 5 in Italy and Switzerland. Gold in the US, silver in the UK. Then the gongs, Oscar for Best Original Song at the 82 ceremony, beating out Endless Love again. Golden Globe in the same category, even a Grammy nod for Cross. Bayer-Sager, watching the scene loop on a monitor with Bacharach, nailed why it fit. The director wanted a song to play over the opening scene, which is a songwriter's dream, because when it plays over the end credits, half the audience is already walking out. For Cross, it bridged his solo reveries to collaborative pop, a bridge he'd cross again on his sophomore LP, Another Page. But in that moment, it's pure 1981 escapism. A millionaire's dilemma we all kind of envy, scored to a line born in airport limbo. If Sailing was the calm, then this is the harbour, messy, moonlit, and the best you can do. It's a song to fall in love to. I know I certainly did. For track 12, we are back with the boys in black, The Cure. We last left The Cure in the damp, echoing corridors of their 1981 album Faith, with that brooding single Primary serving as our entry point into their deepening post-punk gloom, a track where Robert Smith's voice floats over Lol Tolhurst's tribal drums and Simon Gallup's rumbling bass like a fog rolling in off the English Channel. Faith had dropped in April of that year, cementing the band's shift from the twitchy new wave of 17 Seconds into something more monastic and mournful. But The Cure weren't done excavating their melancholy just yet. Fast forward to the summer of 81 and they're squeezing in a standalone single amid a whirlwind of European festivals and prep for their first proper North American tour. Recorded in 2 days, July the 16th and 17th at producer Mike Hedges' brand new Playground Studios in England, Charlotte Sometimes emerges as a non-album gem, a shimmering yet sinister postcard from the band's interior world. Press play now. The song has got that signature Cure tension, Smith's keening guitar lines weaving through a melody that's almost pretty if not for the lyrics' undercurrent of dislocation and loss. The rhythm section, Gallop on bass, Tolhurst on drums, pulses like a hesitant heartbeat, while Smith's vocals ache with a vulnerability that feels both infinite and intimate. Released on October the 9th, 1981 via Fiction and Polydor Records, it scraped to number 44 on the UK singles chart, a very modest peak, but enough to keep the faithful hooked. At its core, Charlotte Sometimes is a bit of clever literacy larceny, in the best possible way, from Penelope Farmer's 1969 children's novel of the same name. The book follows a young girl, Charlotte, who attends a boarding school and begins time-slipping. By day, she swaps places with another student, Elsie, 40 years in the past, blurring identities and eras in a haze of confusion and isolation. Robert Smith, then just 12, first encountered the story when his older brother Richard read it aloud to him. As Smith later put it, the tale never got out of my head. He lifted themes for the lyrics. All the faces, all the voices blur, change to one face, change to one voice. Echoes the novels. By bedtime, all the faces, the voices had blurred for Charlotte to one face, one voice. Smith has been candid about the pilfering. There have been a lot of literary influences through the years. Charlotte Sometimes was a very straight lift. The recording itself was a hurried affair, captured during that brief studio window before the band jetted off to the States. Hedges, who helmed Faith, co-produced with The Cure, emphasising the track's ethereal glow against its shadowy themes. Visually, the song got a promo video directed by Mike Mansfield, shot at the derelict Holloway Sanatorium in Virginia Water, Surrey, a former asylum. But the band clashed with Mansfield, opting for Tim Pope on future clips. Amid the ruins, though, Smith stumbled on haunting patient artwork from the sanatorium's art therapy days, sparking the band's later MenCap benefit gigs. Retrospectively, it's hailed as a goth masterpiece of doomed beauty and ruined elegance, per Paul Simpson's The Rough Guide to Cult Pop. The track resurfaced on the 1986 singles compilation Staring at the Sea, the 2005 Faith Deluxe bonus disc, and live cuts from the concert in 1984 and Paris in 1986. It even inspired a sequel of sorts, 1984's The Empty World from the Top, another Farmer nod. In The Cure's catalogue, Charlotte Sometimes stands as an eerie siren, pulling us further into Smith's haunted reveries. So, for our final song on Playlist 13, we're with a group whose voices defined the sound of Motown's golden era, but who are mounting a serious comeback after nearly a decade in the wilderness. The Four Tops and their sleek, aching disco soul plea, When She Was My Girl. If you've ever felt that pang of looking back on a love that slipped away, this one's got your name on it. Smooth as a late night drive, with Levi Stubbs' baritone wrapping around every regret like velvet. Let's have a quick rewind on the Tops, because this is our first spin with them here, and boy, do they deserve the spotlight. This is track 13, Playlist 13. The Four Tops started life in Detroit, that crucible of American soul, back in 1953, though some accounts put it to 1954, when four high school kids from Pershing High banded together at a graduation party. They called themselves the Four Aims at first, a nod to their jazz ambitions, and the lineup that stuck for decades was locked in from the jump. Levi Stubbs on lead vocals, that deep, urgent rumble that could make your spine tingle. Abdul Juke Fakir handling the tenor and falsetto highs. Ronaldo Obi Benson on baritone, steady as a heartbeat. And Lawrence Payton on the bass lines and keys, keeping it all grounded. All Detroit natives, all friends since their teens. Stubbs and Fakir went way back to elementary school. They weren't chasing fame at first. They gigged in supper clubs, backing up heavyweights like Billy Eckstein, Della Reese and Count Basie, and even opened for Brooke Benton in the 1950s. No drama, no lineup changes. They were a unit polished by years of road work. By 1960, to dodge mix-ups with the Ames brothers, they rebranded as the Four Tops. They bounced around labels, Chess, Riverside, even a shot at Columbia, for singles that flickered but never quite caught fire. Think doo-wop tinged jazz pop like Could It Be You in 1962, solid but not seismic. Then, in 1963, Motown's Berry Gordy signed them after hearing their demo tape, passed along by a DJ friend. It was a slow burn. Their first Motown single, Baby I Need Your Loving, dropped in 1964 and cracked the top 20. But 1965, that's when the dam broke. I Can't Help Myself, Sugar Pie Honey Bunch hit number 1 on the pop charts. A candy sweet earworm with that unstoppable horn hook. It's the same old song followed right behind at number 5, recycling the same groove because, hey, if it ain't broke. The hits piled up like snow in a Michigan winter. Reach Out, I'll Be There topped the charts in 1966. That urgent promise powered by the Andante's background vocals and the Funk Brothers' taut rhythm section. Standing in the Shadows of Love and Bernadette kept the momentum in 66 and 67, both top 10 smashes, with Holland Dozier Holland crafting those dramatic strings-laced confessions that made Stubbs sound like he was singing from the edge of a cliff. By the end of the 60s, they'd racked up 13 top 40 singles, 2 number ones, and sold millions, all while touring relentlessly. They even crossed over the pond. Reach Out went top 10 in the UK, and they shared stages with the Beatles on Ed Sullivan in 65. But Motown's magic had an expiration date for the Tops. After Stillwater Love peaked at number 11 in 1970, their last real chart topper there, Contract Dispute, soured things. They bolted in 72, signing with ABC and Dunhill. The shift to producer-songwriters like Stevie Wonder, who penned Keeper of the Castle, which hit number 7, and even a nod to social themes in Are You Man Enough from the Shaft soundtrack, kept them relevant, but the spark dimmed. Albums like Main Street People in 73 and Meetings of the Minds in 74 on Dunhill charted modestly, dipping into funk and message tracks like One Chain Don't Make No Prison. By the late 70s, stints at ABC again, Nightline in 1978, and a brief Atlantic detour yielded crickets. No top 40s since 74. They were legends in exile, headlining oldies reviews while the disco wave crashed without them. Enter 1981 and a lifeline from Casablanca Records, home to Kiss and Donna Summer, courting that adult contemporary glow. The Tops inked a deal, and their first fruit was Tonight, a 9-track LP produced in part by Jeffrey Osborne of the Brothers Johnson, blending disco pulse with soul balladry. Clocking in at 38 minutes, it featured cuts like Don't Walk Away and the title track, Tonight I'm Gonna Love You All Over. But the lead single, When She Was My Girl, written by Brazilian songwriter Jorge Benjor in his first English credit, New York hitmaker Mark Blatt and Larry Gottlieb. Recorded in Los Angeles, it layers Stubbs' raw rake over a lilting synth groove, shimmering keys, a steady beat at 108 BPM, and horns that stab like old Motown memories. The lyrics hit with that universal bruise. When she was my girl, there was laughter and loving in my world every day. When she was my girl, oh what joy she would bring. Now I've lost everything. No wild anecdotes behind the pen. Benjor's samba roots flavoured the rhythm. Blatt and Gottlieb supplied the heartbreak hook. But it captured the Tops' matured fire. Stubbs at 49, sounding wiser, warier, sexier. It dropped in April 81, climbing to number 11 on the Billboard Hot 100 by July. Their biggest pop showing since 72, and number 1 on the R&B chart for a week, holding off Luther Vandross. Radio ate it up. Tonight scraped the R&B chart at number 29. Critics noted the polish. A Billboard review praised its vintage Tops harmonies, updated for the 80s. It was a bridge from their 60s peak to 80s relevance, proving the voices still cut through the synth fog. The story deepens post-release. Casablanca pushed it hard. It crossed to adult contemporary at number 15, drawing in the old fans who'd grown up with Baby I Need Your Loving on their parents' hi-fi. For the tops, it was vindication after the lean years. No scandals, no feuds, just four guys who'd logged 28 years together at that point, turning nostalgia into now. Bruce Springsteen even cut a version in 2022. By 83, they'd circle back to Motown for the 25th anniversary special, duetting with the Temptations on Shake a Tail Feather. But 81's spark reignited the fire. If Motown was their youth, Casablanca was their glow-up. Proof that some harmonies age like fine bourbon. Stick around, we've got more from where that came from in 1988. So that's all she wrote on Playlist 30, but do join us next week as we kick on into Playlist 31, and what an absolute killer lineup it is. We reach the latter part of October 1981, and there we find Laurie Anderson with one of the more polarising tracks of the early decade. My previous guest Justin Lewis loves that particular song, by the way. We get our one and only moment with Bob Seger, go all Costa Brava, Costa del Sol with Julio Iglesias, get some reggae going with Trevor Waters, meet the incredible Haircut 100 for the first time, get more OMD, and then end the episode with a song that's very important to me in my 80s education. The Police, with Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic. As always, if you can leave a review on your pod platform of choice, that would be super smashing great. But until next time, have a wonderful week. Take care.